Hi, everyone. This is Kimberly Miller, your holistic health expert and owner of Healing with Excellence. I'm here today with two amazing guests, Argy and her mother, Poda. And we're
Hi.
going to discuss, yes, hi, guys. Thank you for being here. We're going to discuss a pretty traumatic situation we went through last January and just discuss the realities of healing and managing a medical event and just get through this the best we can. Now, it did happen a year and a half ago now, so we're going to try to recollect it as clearly and effectively as possible. But some of what occurred during that time was so profound and happened so quickly that sometimes we won't even be able to remember or really truly express to you what happened. We're just going to be able to share pieces of it, but you know how you say you don't really live it, you don't really feel it unless you lived it. So we're going to do our best to share with you why we were so passionate about recording this podcast. But if there's any questions that anybody listening has that you need for clarification or to, kind of ask us how that happened, please feel free to message us because I'm sure that each of us, out of three of us, we're going to put our heads together. But I'm sure there's going to be something that either we leave out or that we'd like to expand upon later. And we might do a deeper podcast on just a specific topic. But we're going to really share with you guys what happened. And I'll give a little recap too, and then let them expand upon it. But Poda and RG, just to give the listeners a recap, so you don't have to recap at all. Poda had been really doing her best to take care of her health. She lived on her own in her early 70s. She had been walking, she was cooking for herself. But she was also told if you eat less, you're going to be able to lose weight and manage your blood sugar differently. And she had been trying to manage her blood sugar for years effectively. And even on blood sugar medication and with specific blood pressure meds, her blood sugar was not really getting below 300. And we were noticing that she was having a reaction to her medication. There's actually an issue where beta blockers can actually induce diabetes, just like statin drugs can. So Poda had come off of her medications, and then she was again trying to do everything naturally, but she didn't realize that she was being a little too restrictive with her food and that it was causing her blood sugar to rise. And one night her blood sugar rose very rapidly. And she had never been insulin dependent, never had insulin injections. So nobody really had any formula on how to give her like a fast acting insulin through that case because it never happened. So, RG, can you recollect the night that your mom was staying with you,
Mhm.
what that felt like and what happened that night? Because you called me and we set up a game plan pretty quickly.
Yeah, she was upstairs. I normally don't sleep upstairs, but something told me that night, just, pull out the air mattress and keep an eye on her. And, the air mattress happened to give way that night, and thankfully it did. And, my initial reaction was to go downstairs and get some sleep because I had work the next day, but something told me, go check on mom because she was not feeling well that day at all. Throughout the day, it was just progressively getting worse. Um, so I went to check on her in her room and she wasn't there. Saw the light on in the bathroom and, basically knocked on the door and she didn't answer. Luckily, the door was unlocked, but she had kind of collapsed against the door.
Mhm.
Um, you know, you find a way to get in there, which I did. Got her up off the floor. Anthony met me on the other side with a chair. The kids were there, and her first reaction was, as much as she was out of it, call Kim.
Oh
So call
gosh.
Kim. Yeah,
She's like,
she
I'm
did.
going to brainwash myself with this.
Yeah, no, I mean, her was her first. Those were the only coherent words that she could get
I
out.
don't remember
She was
anything.
reaching for things that were not there. She
Mhm.
was so out of it. We called you.
Mhm.
Anthony called 911 on the other side. The ambulance came. They assessed her. I'm not sure if they checked her glucose there at that moment, but it was an urgent situation where we had to get her to the emergency room. They did call it in as a stroke alert or a possible stroke alert due to how incoherent she was.
Mhm.
I rode in the ambulance and then we were in the ER. It felt like it was so quick. I just remember it feeling really, really quick. They
Yeah.
got her there and got her into the ER. And I think we were on the phone the whole time, Kim. I can't remember when our initial conversation started, but I remember throughout that ER visit, when they were assessing her and taking care of her, you were on the phone with me the whole time. Um, eh, the way they were talking to her was kind of shocking, to be honest. You know, do you know where you are? They were asking her things like that. You're here in the ER. Yes, you've been abusing your body. And I just was a little taken aback. There was no compassion, no real, can you tell me what happened? Can you tell me what led up to this? Uh, what has she been eating? What kind of meds is she on? None of that seemed to really come into play. It was just, you've been abusing your body. You're here in the ER.
Mm,
Then it was rush, rush, rush to get her to, I think it was a CAT scan. They wanted to do a CAT scan.
mhm.
I remember us talking about this.
Yeah.
You were concerned about whether they were going to use the dye,
Mhm.
and why hadn't they got her, on an insulin pump, because her glucose did come back. I think it was like over 600. I
It was,
remember,
yeah.
yeah, it
Right.
was a really high number. And,
Mhm.
obviously when your glucose is that high, of course you're going to be incoherent. You're going to be completely out of it.
Right.
But they were, pushing the whole CAT scan thing before they assessed her insulin, get her some insulin to see how she reacts to it. And I remember fighting with them, and I hate using that word, but it felt like a fight. It really did.
Sadly, it does. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was unnecessary. They didn't really want to listen. Maybe they don't have time to listen, in all fairness, to what they're going through on a daily
Right.
basis.
Mhm.
But I think when you have family members there that are, aware of what is going on, take into consideration what they have to say. And I
Mhm.
remember you jumping in there on the phone again, just, hey, we appreciate everything that you've done for her, to this point, but can we please get her on the insulin pump? And then we'll discuss doing a CAT scan, but
Mhm.
let's just see how she does. And there was, even just signing the form, declining the CAT scan. I remember saying, we're not declining. And I remember you piping in too. We're not declining. We're just delaying. And I
Right.
tried putting that on the piece of paper, when they wanted my signature, and they're like, you can't write on that. I'm like, you know what? And I used some words. I'm like, if you want my signature on this piece of paper, I'm going to write whatever I want to write. And
Right.
I just remember your words coming in, and this may be upsetting, but are you going to be at her funeral?
Mhm.
Are you people going to be at her funeral? No, it's her loved ones that are going to be there. I just
Mhm.
remember those words in the back of my head throughout, the 5 days that we were at the hospital with her, was just you
Mhm.
saying, are you going to be at her funeral? Don't be afraid to speak up, because you might only have one chance to say what you
Mhm.
need to say to save your loved one's life. I mean, sometimes those moments, you don't even realize that you're in those moments when they're
Right.
happening.
Right.
Some things that might just seem like a really innocent decision. Do you want to put a catheter in the neck, or do you want to do what was it, a swallow study?
Mhm.
Remember, just things that sound like, they could be positive to move
Mhm.
her along in her healing process, actually turn out to be things that could deter and actually cause her to decline further. It was
Mhm.
crazy how much I didn't know, and again, was so, so incredibly thankful to have you, on the other side on that phone whenever we needed. It was,
Oh, no, and I was grateful to be with you guys. I think I was in Egypt at the time,
yeah,
when that happened. And that's why I tell people, some people think I'm too busy. I'm like, I can be anywhere in the world, just message me, because I would much rather know that we did our
yeah,
best, we tried, versus and get as ahead of it as much as possible versus on the back end. Because there are things where I can fill in the gaps. And again, sometimes you can't make a promise because someone is in a crisis,
right,
with your mom being in her 70s, that we knew that it was a high risk either way, even if everything went perfect at the ER. But a lot of people don't realize, when you called, your kids were there, they saw their grandmother like that. You
yeah,
were trying to guide them on what to do, but trying not to freak out on them too, and keep yourself stable, because it's scary. And
yeah,
then I remember when she got to the ER, see, this is where it becomes a complication. Like, again, your mom never in the past needed fast acting glucose,
right,
insulin, I'm sorry. So she didn't have that available to her, and nobody had the right formulation for her. So
right,
when she went in, let's say she was a child already diagnosed with diabetes 1 and this were happening, they wouldn't be putting her through a CT scan based on the checklist. They would have instantly been helping get some kind of fast acting insulin, or they might have had the formula. like if the family were, ran out. And again, those of you that are listening that are passionate from the emergency room or in the medical community, you could also message us and help fill in the gaps. But when someone's a certain age and they look a certain way, they
Yeah.
just go down that checklist. And we knew in our heart of hearts that this was not a stroke. Now,
Right.
can like DKA and issues with diabetes lead to that? Of course it can. But we
Right.
didn't want to keep wasting time with her blood sugar being over 600 when we knew if this was a young kid with diabetes 1, they would have just given some fast acting insulin on some level. At least
Right.
that would be my logical thought. Maybe I'm not doing that still in the ER, but maybe someone needs to educate me on that. So when they wanted to take her for a CT scan with contrast and her having some kidney sensitivity,
Yeah.
I was personally concerned that if we kept doing a bunch of tests and adding things that were a stressor and chemical stressor to her body, that she could take a decline and they would just blame it on her decline from the diabetes and the blood sugar and kidney
Right.
failure versus knowing that they did the wrong thing at the wrong time. So we asked to wait till the labs were back, even though it seemed like time was of the essence. We knew that she was overall stable or safe there. She was at the ER. They didn't know she'd been running over 300 blood sugar literally for
Right.
years. But we knew 600 was going to be an issue. And we wanted them to first help get the blood sugar under control
Right.
and then decide whether to do the CT scan. And then I understand they ask questions to see how coherent she is. But I've watched them, someone will be completely comatose, and I watch them talk like the person's responding. And I'm like, I've been in the room and I'm like, who are you talking to? They're not even there. And then you, as the advocates there, and they'll
Oh,
almost to completely negate you as if you don't exist because they don't
right.
want to answer to you. And they're like, oh, she hasn't been deemed incompetent to speak for herself. Well, she's kind of in a coma and can't speak.
Right.
And so I appreciate that they're assessing, could she talk? What is it? But sometimes as they keep questioning, it's like, are you not recognizing that's why she has an advocate with her? And we're losing time by trying to talk to the person that's incoherent. And
Right.
could you trust the person that's known her much longer than you? And could we try that? So a lot of people don't realize that contrast can cause someone a stark decline if they're already in a crisis. And
Right.
there's a protocol to follow. But again, we were all willing to take the risk that she was most likely not having a stroke. And if we
Right.
took the wrong risk and it came back that she was, then that was going to be on us. But we
Right.
knew mother's wishes prior to this, and we knew what she had been doing.
Yeah.
So I think they finally did end up getting a way to get her the insulin, correct? Because we did, or at least a fast acting insulin, because I know we did not do the CT scan.
We did not do the CT scan initially. I think she ended up having a
Later
CT
on, I
scan
think. Yeah, yeah.
without the contrast because, I think what you said, and it was a while ago. But they got her on the insulin and her numbers started to come down. And then we moved on to the concerns, again, this is still in the ER with her body temperature. Her body temperature was, I think, at 1.89. Um, they
Yeah.
were having a hard time getting it up, so they put the heating blanket on her. I think that's what it's
Mhm.
called.
Yeah.
And her temperature started to come up, but it was a rough go in the ER, and
Mhm.
it was a real and the kicker is the doctor even himself who came in and saw her was like, she's not having a stroke. He's like,
Mhm.
I'm fairly confident she's not having a stroke, and yet they were still pushing that CAT scan with the contrast on her.
And like you were being irresponsible. Now, I
Yes.
remember through one of the approaches they did take. So, yeah, so this was happening. And I think they felt if they put a lot of fluid in her body, they were going to help with getting the temperature up. And I explained that that's one way. I said, but she also hasn't had much food or calories. That's one reason her temperature's down. And of course, she's
Right.
under stress. But I had a concern if they gave too much fluid too quickly that it would impact her kidneys because her kidneys were
Yes.
compromised. So you and I agreed to meet them in the middle, allow them to do like and again I can't recollect perfectly, but it was like 2 units of fluid or something. But we said
Yeah.
if we see her go the opposite direction, that we're going to ask you to stop immediately, and we're going to go the
Right.
direction that we assume is going to help her body the best based on what she's experienced. And again, I'm not a licensed medical professional. I've just dealt with thousands of people in this position, and I understand very well how the body works. And because I have not been trained to look at it in only a specific checklist, and I'm looking
Right.
at the whole body and that person's whole lifestyle and their
Yep.
mental stress. I have a different input to offer that most times it's spot on. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but we knew that this was life or death, that we didn't try to
Right.
a little bit more methodical route versus a checklist that we were probably going to lose her. And I remember when they gave the 2 units of fluid, they dropped her kidney function down to 15. I
Yeah.
think it was like in the 40s, it went to 15. And then she wasn't even coherent with you at all. She had gotten, if I remember correctly, she got coherent a little while, then they tried their way, and then she was complete. And I remember having the conversation with you, RG, and this might sound crazy to other people, but I remember telling you that, RG, this might say it's going to be all about God and your mom right now. And I tried to explain to you that I don't want you to feel you did something wrong or that but that she may not come back based on what her previous health history was, and that I needed you to accept that if her and God chose for her to pass over, that it was the time that she's supposed to be with your dad, and that this was the reason. Don't blame yourself. I said, but we're going to try to do scientifically what looks like it needs to be done.
Right.
And if God and your mom is ready to stay here, we're going to accept that. But if not, I didn't want you to beat yourself up, you know?
Yeah.
And when
I
we
remember.
took, yeah, you remember? And when we took the opposite route of not loading her with fluids, letting her come back, and then I said, can you message Anthony, see if he can get broth, get this, get that. And he was like our awesome runner. And then when you had to go home and get rest and help the kids, he would stay there. Then I'd communicate with him. And it was hard for him because he was being thrown in the middle last minute. And he's like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can keep up with all this. But we all did great as a team, even though it was exhausting, you know? And as soon as
Yeah,
she got coherent enough and started doing the broth and doing the different nutrition, she came
yeah.
back
Yes,
to,
she did.
she did amazing, that I felt that we could get her home if we could get her on it, because we did need to have some kind of insulin support
Right.
this process. We knew that her pancreas might have been damaged or things
Right.
might have happened through the previous healthcare that she had.
Yeah.
And that if we got her home, I felt that we could help her recover to, at least 60 to 70%. So do you remember much about that time when he was bringing the broth? We were telling him to stop the excess fluids, to stop stressing the kidneys. What do you remember about that time?
I remember when they were moving her from the ER to the ICU, the nurse at the time came in and said the doctor wanted to do a catheter in the neck to give her fluids faster.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, we had been talking about too much fluids. It's going to crash your kidneys worse. And I remember, it's completely up to you. It's completely up to you. And when you and I talked, you explained that putting it in the neck is gonna cause the fluids to hit her system even harsher,
Mm-hmm.
faster, and it would probably, make
Make
her
her
pass.
right.
So I declined. I said, no, we're going to decline. And I remember the doctor coming in and trying to coerce me into, you're going to kill her if you don't do this. And, my
Mhm.
stance was, well, it could kill her if we do. She's had too many fluids already. And I had taken pictures, to show just, I mean, she was, and mom hasn't seen the
Edema.
pictures.
Yeah, there was a ton of edema. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like, no, we're gonna know. And he stormed out of there and wouldn't look at me, talk to me the rest of the day. I mean, he just,
Yeah.
I was just a stupid person who,
Yeah.
was killing her
You're
mom.
Googling stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm the Dr. Google. All right. Yeah. But in the end, it was the right call. I mean, that catheter, I mean, and we saw, I don't mean to be jumping ahead, but we saw the steady decline with her kidney function. It was scary. They got her into the ICU, they settled her in, and she was out of it for, gosh, I don't think she came out of it.
2 days after, I believe.
I think it was like a day or two after, in the middle of the night, she just woke up and was just like, where am I? What happened? She
Mhm.
didn't know. And
I do
I'm glad
remember
she doesn't
being
remember.
thirsty and hungry.
Yes. She
That I
was thirsty and
remember.
hungry. Yes.
Yeah, your body needed a lot. No, and I understand. And so, yes, it's true. The reason, too, that you and I were being so hesitant about the rush in the fluid, she was actually starting to stabilize after the insulin.
Right.
And we're like, wait, let's not add more variables. She actually
Right.
looks like she's coming back, getting better. The numbers are getting better. We're like, why are we going to throw a variable to rush something that could be hard to reverse because it
Right.
might come in so quickly? And again, one more procedure, putting a neck catheter in and all that. Now, if she was already steadily declining, this would probably be a different conversation or a
Right.
different conversation you would have with them. And again, I know some people from the medical community are cringing right now. But again, it's not just about a protocol or a checklist. It's knowing the person. It's paying attention to the subtle signs of improvement versus trying to make the person perfect immediately. It's not going to happen. The person's
Right.
already in a metabolic decline, having a problem. And, you know, the average life expectancy is only in our 70s. I mean, so we know that there's organs that might give out. And when you push too hard too quickly or do 10 things at one time, that's not
Right.
really good scientific method. You're adding too many variables at one time versus slow and methodical. But a lot of times, you know, you feel if I don't catch the stroke in this time, you're going to lose time to save them. But knowing the person's history, listening to their family, and just like the doctor, and you'll see this all the time, you'll see one person in the medical community that's passionate about you getting the CT thinking they're having a stroke. The other person will come in right behind and say, oh, no, they're not having a stroke. So you're like, which one do I even listen to?
Yeah.
And it's just stressful because one person's going to be pissed off, or maybe three people, no matter what decision you make.
Right. That's a really hard thing to face when you're trying to care for your loved one. You're trying to do what's best for them, honor what their wishes would be,
Yes.
and then you're faced with angry nurses, angry doctors, just condemning you and oh, she's crazy. And every shift change with nurses and then having to re-advocate again, and this is why we're doing this, and have to explain it was exhausting. It really was.
No, it is exhausting. And again, I
Shouldn't
understand
be that way.
what we've all been taught. And when we get a different staff at every 12 hours, that makes
Yep.
it pretty difficult. And what's hard when you're in the thick of it, and the more days you're there, the more exhausted as the advocate you're getting. It's hard to keep up with all that. That's why it's good when we have all of our heads being put together, you know, and then as soon as your mom came to, I know you started talking to her more about what she wanted. Now, Poda, do you remember much of that time in the hospital when you were actually finally awake?
I remember being thirsty, like I said, and hungry. Um, but it was such a blessing, the broth that I was receiving, because I couldn't chew, I couldn't swallow.
Mhm.
And even having to sneak that in. I had to sneak it in.
But
That was so
the
ridiculous.
broth,
Yeah.
drinking it. And
Yeah.
they would wake me up and give me broth every 2 hours, even during the night.
Yeah,
Just
the
a
goal
little
was
bit.
to eat minerals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
But
what a lot of people don't realize, the most common study that will be done, like especially like let's say they thought she had a stroke, they might want to do a swallow study.
Yeah.
And
I
again,
think we did that, didn't we?
We did a bedside swallow. So I'm sure Kim's going to touch upon this because she was really instrumental in avoiding a certain swallow study that could have harmed mom big time.
yeah, I think so. I think you guys did the swallow study differently. And again, some of it, it's hard now going back, but I think they wanted to do a barium swallow study. Then I think
Yes.
they had an OT or someone come into the room and do something different to see how she was, you know,
Right.
they actually had someone assess her more effectively versus just putting her on the normal checklist of the studies.
Right.
It's very common that they'll want to do a barium swallow study. But from my experience, and again, I don't see all of the wondrous stories, but a lot of times if they see the person swallowing ineffectively, they have the same solution, like, oh, you're just going to thicken the food, you're going to do this. Well, you could try that anyway from the beginning, and you could thicken it in a more natural way. But the barium, especially when you've just had a crisis and to your kidneys,
Right.
plus that swallow study is another stressor to the physical body that delays the healing or makes the person decline. And they think it was just the person declining, but they don't realize that the cells can only handle so much stress. And the more they're not getting minerals, rest, nurturing, love, the appropriate fluid, and they're just getting chemicals, poking, prodding, torturing, that the cells are having to work 10 times harder to maintain homeostasis or to recover, to get back to homeostasis. And so the goal is again, to be as conservative as possible, only do what's absolutely needed, reduce as many chemicals as possible to help preserve the kidneys or other organs that would react to heavy metal or some kind of, chemical, and then go that route. So I remember they did a bedside study, didn't ever swallow the barium. She did fine. And then as she was able to like get back to the drinking, eating, everything returned right back to normal. See, a lot of people don't realize when your body's trying to shut down, your digestive system might start shutting down, stuff with your hormones and reproductive system with a younger person. But lots of things, your heart rate might slow down. But if you come to and your body starts getting the right nourishment and slow methodical care, it tends to start correcting itself depending on how that approach is taken. If we're still supposed to be here, sometimes it really is our time to go. So I remember we got her stable enough, and then we got her help with long-lasting insulin and fast-acting, but we saw that every time she took the long-lasting insulin, it was also tanking her kidneys. And so we found some contraindications with that. And I remember she had to stop the long-lasting insulin. And then she just had to deal with basically reactive fast-acting insulin as needed and managed what she had. But I remember she got home, you guys took her in, and then I think one mistake we made, but we were trying to do the right thing, was you took her to a primary care appointment the first week home. Do you remember that?
The very
Oh,
next
yeah.
day.
Oh, the next day. And you
It was the
did the
next
right
day.
thing.
That was
But when you went, can you remember? Because I remember that appointment caused you guys a lot of stress, physical stress, getting there, waiting on the appointment, dealing with the communication. What happened that day, if you can remember at all?
we were there for hours.
It was an extended appointment. I mean, we were pressured to take her in immediately by the hospital. They're like, she needs to see an endocrinologist, she needs to get set up with a primary care, all of that. And I mean, she had a doctor, but we just couldn't get an appointment fast enough according to what the hospital wanted us to do. So we ended up switching primary care, and to get her established, they wanted to see her the very next day. And I had explained to them that she had just gotten out of the hospital. Could we wait? And they're like, no, especially because she's coming out of the hospital. They wanted to see her immediately. And that put so much stress on mom, physically, emotionally, like she just gotten out of the hospital and just wanted to be home. We took her. The wait was horrendous. The intake forms were, we answered the questions, but then when we were taken into the office, it was like answering the same questions over and over and over again. First by the medical assistant, then by the doctor, which prolonged the appointment. At the end, we signed up for the portal, and this was the shocker. And I don't even know if I should be saying this, but the shocker was, I was expecting to see, talking about her DKA and getting out of the hospital and what's going to be happening next, what steps is she going to be taking in her life moving forward. And it was all about patient needs. I can't believe this. Patient needs sexual education awareness. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
All these intake forms coming straight out of the hospital. And I'm like, what? I mean, it was like over their heads. It was like, it was a wasted appointment. It was a complete and total wasted appointment. And then on top of that, it just set her back. She was even more exhausted on top of that.
Yeah, I could probably go back through all my texts. I remember getting messages while you were there. I probably should review them before this call again, because I can remember, I'm like, what the hell are they doing to her? And so, again, there's a protocol. And again, when I tell people about holistic, we utilize medicine also. And again, was so grateful that the ER could get access to the insulin, monitor her stats, the blood work. That is where modern medicine is just a huge blessing, especially if it's handled with care and empathy. But I'm like, no, if someone just became stable, it just like if you have the flu or COVID, it's actually pretty good if you rest at home for a week or two and then start doing those appointments to see where they're at after a week or two of rest. Now, again, to the general public, that doesn't mean we ignore everything. When you're at home, you might still check a pulse ox to make sure the pulse O2. You might do blood pressure, check her blood sugar. You guys were already doing that. You had your awesome notebook. You had all your tools available. So we were tracking that. If she had any decline, of course, we get her right back to the ER. A general practitioner in the office wouldn't have been able to do anything anyway. They would have called 911.
Exactly.
So that people don't realize, between your exhaustion and your whole family's exhaustion of dealing with that traumatic event for how was she there? 2 weeks? How long was she
5
there?
days.
5 a week. Okay. So,
yeah,
but
about a week.
yeah, but a week, 5 days is still it's so exhausting, especially when it's such a near death experience. It's much different than 5 days she's awake, we're going to monitor it, make sure she's okay. This was much more intense, and the whole family had to be involved in helping her stabilize. So it's a lot. So anyway, when you guys came home, to instantly get up the next day, and then not, let's say you could have even immediately walked in and got right to the appointment, maybe that would be okay. But to wait, take a 1 to 3 hour appointment with all the other people there. She's also compromised. If other people are sick, it'd be easier for her to decline. I think they even talked about vaccines and other medication that, like, What
Yeah.
are you wasting your time on this right now? We just need to make sure she's stable in the moment, make sure she's even going to live to worry
Right.
about a flu vaccine or COVID vaccine. But do you remember that appointment at all, Poda? Because it was a while ago
I
now.
do. I do remember. We were there for like 3 hours, and I just wanted to go home. I was so tired. I mean, I couldn't walk. I had the walker then.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot
Yeah,
about that. Now you're walking on your own all the time. I forgot about that too.
Yeah.
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 It was an ordeal. Yeah, I don't want to go through anything like that again, and I don't want anybody else going through something like that.
Yeah, and you were just trying to do the right thing, following and not trying
Yes.
to be negligent. Because again, if we've been trained one way, it does seem like you're just being negligent if you don't listen somewhat to what the physician has to say. Because of course,
Mhm.
they do add great value, especially surgeons that save our lives. But sadly, they're just not being taught this other stuff about metabolic function and the
Yeah.
nourishment and cellular stress. And they do learn about it in med school about cellular stress, but it's so skimmed over so quickly. Like there's a Dr. Hans Selye that they cover in almost every medical book, but it's just like skimmed over as if it's nothing. But his
Right.
work, if you understand how it works, is like this life-saving, amazing tool on how to reduce stress to the cell and to help yourself maintain homeostasis as best as possible. But I remember it was, about, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks of you guys just pouring into her, helping to feed her, take care of her. And then eventually she got back to her house. And a lot of
Yes,
people don't realize you're 72 now, Poda, right?
yes,
Okay, so she's 72. She's still living on her own. She only lives a couple blocks away, so it's been safe.
Yeah.
We made sure because she was always scared of needles before that if she did need insulin, she was scared to ever use it. But
Yeah.
in the situation, she had to, and she may always have to use it on some level, but her body continues to heal in some way all the time. And then it
Yes.
might have these one-off things like all of us get, like even me, I could live healthy, but you guys will see I'll post things about my health, like my face
Right.
swelling up. So then what POTA does, she goes back into her triage care or she analyzes how do I up my game? Because we're all aging. And POTA really did, I mean, and I say this all the time, I'm like, you basically came back from the dead.
She
And
did.
that doesn't mean we get to have it easy. Like some individuals that have been through
no,
similar experiences, POTA, it might have taken 2, 3 years for them to feel amazing, but some of them are still here 10 years later in their 80s now. And it's awesome to see. But so POTA still works on managing her blood sugar. She's still, though, on barely any medication. She gets the best result from the fast acting insulin. And you
just
make
the
all of
insulin.
your
Yeah.
own meals now, right, POTA?
Yes, I
Yeah.
make my own. I cook for myself. Yes,
Yeah,
She's
it's a lot. It's a lot. And everybody just pulls
it's
together the best
tiring.
they
It
can.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What'd you
yeah.
say? It's what?
It is tiring. It is a lot preparing, and cleaning up everything. 3 meals.
Hmm.
I'm still recovering. That's what I say. But every day is
Yeah.
something different. I have good days and I have bad days. Not so good days.
Yeah.
I can't say I have bad days. No, I
Well,
am.
yeah, never been hospitalized again. No more
No,
ER visits, no issues
no.
with TKA. She learns so much about her body. She knows how to avoid that now.
Yeah, actually, that was my first hospital visit.
Wow. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you
I
were,
remember them talking about that. They were
Yeah.
asking about her, her previous hospital stays, and they were like shocked that this was her first hospital stay. The person who'd been abusing her body,
yeah.
this was her first hospital stay. Yes.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that a little bit more. And again, we typically end the podcast in under an hour to make it realistic for each of you and for the
Right.
listeners. But there's an assumption in our community, fitness and the medical community, that if someone is dealing with a weight issue, that they're always overeating. And I would tell you about 90% of the clients that I meet with that are dealing with weight issues are under eating, and their body is storing fat for survival. They're shutting down their metabolism. Their body is having a tough time producing ATP or energy because the cells aren't getting the right nutrient makeup. So it can be assumed if someone's overweight or if their blood sugar is off that they're just eating shit food. And I see so many people trying their damnedest to eat better, walk, do activity, or eat less. And that's exactly what happened with your mom between trying to, and this is really critical to talk about today because it's happening to so many people, between trying to manage what was within her budget for food wise, like
Right.
what can we pay for? I can remember when I first got very ill, I didn't know what I could afford, and also I didn't have access to some of the food, and then also
Right.
I didn't know how much I needed real whole foods, and to try to figure out how I was going to cook it, make it with such chronic fatigue, buy it, pay for it. So anyway, what your mom was trying to do, she was trying to maintain a budget. And then she was trying to keep the calories slightly low to keep weight off, to walk like we've been told. But
Right.
she didn't realize some of her nutrients got so low, it was shutting down her metabolic function and
Yeah.
impacting her insulin and glucose levels. Your body produces insulin based on the nutrients you take in. So if you have a deficiency, your body can't do what it's supposed to do. So the assumption was that she's just like, treating her body like shit, or maybe she's gluttonous, and maybe she's lying about what she does. And again, at that time, she was incoherent when they first were
Right.
talking about how she treated her body anyway. But I have known of your mother, I think, for at least 8 years now. And anything I've ever seen of her has been more about balance or too strict.
Right.
And that's caused her the toughest time whenever I've, checked in with her. But in the last, like even you guys first got her home, just her resting and being poured into and being fed all day, she lost like 15 pounds of body fat just resting.
Yeah.
It was reducing cortisol, reducing adrenaline, giving the body the nutrients. She was actually improving her metabolism. So a lot of individuals are being judged that they're just out there oblivious, not
Yeah.
taking care of themselves, and then they're like supposed to pay the consequence for that. And no, many people are trying so hard with today's world and sorting through what's a lie, what's not a lie, what's healthy, what's
Right.
not healthy. And again, how many of our physicians are really helping us with how to effectively treat our body?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
true. I was so thankful again for you being, by our side through the whole thing. And then we finally aligned with a medical doctor in the ICU that was echoing what you were saying about nutrition. And he looked at her numbers and was like, yeah, we're fine. She's wasting away. Her body's eating itself. She was starving.
Yeah, she
And
needs.
to hear a medical doctor echo what you were saying, even though I knew you were right,
Yeah,
it
I
helped to have a medical doctor that was on her team in the hospital echoing what you were saying so that we could move her towards, you know, getting better, getting her out of the hospital, getting her home where she could continue to heal and move past everything. Up until that point, up until that doctor came in and echoed what you were saying, it was it felt so bleak. It felt like we were just, talking to a brick wall. It was very difficult.
No, and it's very scary, and everybody's doing the best they can with what they know, and also like the licensure rules, like if they don't do something specific, like if your mom shows elevated cholesterol and the physician doesn't prescribe a statin, they can be
Right.
held accountable with their license for not doing that or by somebody suing them. So there's a lot of dynamics that are causing our system to be like this today. So I completely understand. But you said something critical earlier about like what the patient's wishes are.
Right.
That's something that has not been easy for a lot of people to understand. I even go through this with some of my veterinarians I work with. When, a patient has a desire in how they want to be treated and how they want to live, they might not want a DNR, like a complete do not resuscitate. They might want some extraordinary measures taken, but not everything to just be tortured, so to speak, right at the
Right.
end. And I'm not saying sometimes extraordinary measures become a necessary torture that leads to an amazing blessing. But there are times when, well, oftentimes, especially if it's a caring family member that's been involved with their life, not someone just popping out of the blue. You've been around your mom for the last several years all the time, and you went through the loss of your dad together. When you're trying to speak up for what she would want, even if it's not right by the textbook or medically, it's what she wants. And this is something I've seen happen multiple times in my career that I've talked to my girls about. I need to really write a letter about this. I've watched someone 80 years old being asking to like take the BiPAP mask off just to be able to talk or not have a dry mouth. I
Right.
watched somebody say, no, we got to do it because the doctor says. And then I'd see something happen where maybe the nurses turned the oxygen up to 100% or turned it up enough where that person was at 102. And I know that that person's going to go incoherent and
Right.
never speak to their family member again. And that was the last time they were going to have the opportunity to speak to that family member. Now, if I'm 80 and I'm laying in a bed even if I'm not supposed to take that, if I tell you I want the mask off and I want some water on my mouth or I want to talk to you a minute, I expect after living 80 years that you're going to listen to my wishes, not do what the doctor said is
100%.
right. Because now we can't go back and we can't talk to that person again. And they may be. And so, one other instance that I shared with you guys previously, I had another gentleman in the hospital. He had liver failure due to a chemo that his body couldn't withstand. He had cancer, but the cancer he was managing. A chemo caused liver failure, and he called me from the hospital in between the medication and said, Kim, I need your help. They did a chemo on me that I think my body couldn't handle. And he asked, so I came to the hospital. He was asleep when I got there. He was on a morphine drip and a morphine every 4 hours by pill, waking him up, giving the morphine. He was not screaming in pain. And he's like, when he did wake up, he's like, Kim, I need your help. I want to see if I can get out of here in the hospital. Right. His mom died in a hospital or in a nursing home, never getting to go home with cancer. He wanted to be home if he was going to die, but he wanted me to give it a try.
Right.
When they came to the room, I said, why are you giving him morphine every 4 hours plus a morphine and drip? Oh, to keep him pain free. I said, is he screaming in pain? He doesn't need a proactive pill every 4 hours if he's also getting a morphine drip and he's not screaming in pain. Right. So he asked when he was awake to discontinue the morphine pill, just enough of the morphine that was taking any edge off from any pain. So he's in liver failure. And I told him, the only way we can try to reverse this is specific things nutritionally, and you take meds, but only what you absolutely need, not just polypharmacy to give polypharmacy. Again, if you try to cover every symptom so nobody feels nausea, nobody feels pain, right, you can't hear what the body's telling you. You exactly need to allow some of the symptoms so you know what's right and what's wrong. So this gentleman, I went and I got him a steak, brought it to the emergency room. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't get myself food. I fed him a steak and I haven't eaten in hours, but that's how it happens sometimes. So he ate what he could. We got him stable enough to get him home. Then he started coming back, doing amazing. He pushed too hard, too quickly. We had to get him into a different hospital where I trusted the staff better. Actually, right, you and I have worked with that before and talked about it. Yep. So we trusted the staff better at the hospital. He went there. And we said, we're going to try, but this level of liver failure, it's going to be hard. Well, again, he had asked me to keep the medications as low as possible with his wife. His dad is a physician, retired physician from Johns Hopkins. He had asked me to keep the medications as low as possible to just see what he could do. Right. And so we took him to the hospital. Everybody was listening. All of a sudden, a nurse practitioner, another nurse on staff that knew him like from a chemo treatment, thought that we were being so holistic, we were trying to torture him by reducing his pain meds. She assumed that we were taking advantage of him using our beliefs versus what he wanted. And she tried to go over our head to give him more morphine, more drugs when he was trying to see if his liver could come back. It was so difficult to try to fight that so quickly and say, no, this isn't our beliefs about medication. We're allowing medication. It's just he asked us to do this. He's very intelligent. His dad's very intelligent, and his dad's a physician. And so she was trying to go over our head and almost like, I would say, like trying to get us away from the patient as if we were unsafe for the patient. Now, this is his wife, me, and then the father was in the background speaking, but wasn't, as direct as we were because he was trying to show medical, just being cordial with them based on his training also. So I had to go above the head to the director of the whole floor, write an email as to why we were asking for this. Finally, they listened, so that makes so much sense. I said, this is the patient's wishes. He asked me to do this, and if he can't, he wants me to get him as stable as possible and go to hospice at home. He said he wants to die at home on his farm. Well, we ended up getting him to the point that he could get stable enough to go home. We knew he was still going to pass, but we didn't need to keep him full-time in the hospital. And his wife got to be there holding him when he passed, and he was on the farm with his dad. And his dad said, Kim, I don't know how you did that. We couldn't even get my wife home. How did you get my son home? And I said, well, I just did what he asked versus what they were telling us to do and advocating. But where I'm going with this is I've had to tell multiple medical professionals, I know you care, I know you're passionate, but I promise you, you do not love them more than their daughter, more than their husband, more than their dad, more than even me, because most of the time I've known these people for 1 or more years, maybe 20. And so I said, I know we sound crazy, but this is their wishes. And if I was a nurse practitioner that was struggling in health and I had wishes, I don't give a shit what the protocol says.
Yeah.
I'm going to do how I choose to either peacefully take myself out or how I choose to heal. I want that respected because this is my journey. They
100%.
they don't deal with the side effects of the choices made if it causes you to lose your limbs or causes you to lose your brain cells or causes you more scar tissue. If practicing at all costs has no respect to the patient, how is that a healthy way to treat anybody?
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. You're 100% correct. And touching upon what you said, that I remember that feeling of her being in the hospital. It, the sense of, are we going to be able to get her home? Are they going to let us leave? That's a
Right.
scary feel. Like, I mean, we had to jump through hurdles to get her to be able to be discharged, you
Mhm.
know,
Because of my kidneys.
because of, the whole thing. It was just crazy. It shouldn't be like that. If you want to take your loved one home, you should be able to take them home. It
Yeah,
should
and
not have to
yeah.
be a
Yeah,
battle.
yeah, to clarify with everybody, we have a case manager on my team that she'll teach you about patient rights and help advocate for you to help do that safely. But again, when we got Poda home, it was, and again, this is what is hard. There are some people that don't go in with any kind of true thought or science behind them. They're just demanding something for their parents. So I understand what the medical community is going through and how they're trying to
Right.
protect the patient. But there's times that there's really much more thorough care happening, and it's you can't just assume it by the surface level right up front. But
Right.
when she got home, what did we do? We made sure a phlebotomist could come to the house to do her blood draw. We made sure that the kidneys were healing and getting better with our plan. We just didn't assume that she's doing okay.
Right.
Again, you guys kept a diligent journal, you tracked everything. You
Hmm.
still kept in touch with that physician as needed,
Yes.
and getting the endocrinologist. So you were not anti-medicine
Right.
or just anti-exhaustion
Yeah.
or anti throw the whole kitchen cabinet against her because you really wanted to be more of a methodical approach that matched her body versus assuming she was a stroke victim in her 70s.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I see this all the time. If an elderly person goes in with fluid on the lungs, it's often immediately assumed that they have pneumonia and just put them on antibiotics, Tylenol, and Zofran. And many times it's coming from anemia. And if you just keep throwing stuff on them, assuming it's pneumonia, it often causes that person a harder crash or codependency on oxygen or a ventilator. And it is not because that person was, and again, maybe by God, they were truly supposed to go. Maybe that was their way out, but as a whole, if that mistake or that assumed approach didn't take place, there might be a different path. And I went through a very difficult time watching that with my grandmother, but her life has helped me save hundreds because of this. And it's just, again, like you said, being brave enough to speak up, even if you sound crazy,
Yeah.
because you're the one that suffers the consequences if you don't at least say something. And what happens when I've watched individuals just go against their intuition, their gut, their knowledge, and they're like, okay, I just want to be accommodating, and that person passes away. Again, some of the physicians that were adamant that, oh, you got to do it this way, they are not at the funeral. They are
Right.
not checking in on the patient. I shouldn't say all, but some are not checking in at all. They're not picking up family members from the hospital. They're not rubbing the person's head in hospice. And it's like, again, you can't go back. And then what happens is that person, even if it was supposed to happen that way, will second guess, like, why didn't I speak up? Now, it does change them forever, which is why I am how I am. And I tell all physicians that now, or nurses, I said, please do not take this personal. We've experienced a lot of medical tragedies that we are just very passionate because we're trying to reduce medical tragedies. And it's not us, trying to be bossy or tell you what to do.
Right.
But I've went through this so many times. And luckily, every single person has ended up in a good position and or they were supposed to be at home or their family's wishes and we already knew they were going to pass. We were just honoring their family, you know.
Yeah.
100%.
No, you're right.
I remember encountering that at the hospital with the first ICU nurse that she had. He was the one that came in and brought the doctor and trying to coerce me into the neck catheter for the
Mhm.
fluids. And I saw a family member pull him off to the side and kind of talk to him. Um, and I knew it was about me,
Yeah.
and, crazy, she doesn't listen, all that stuff. And hours had passed and he came in, mom was still out of it. He came in and he sat down with me
Mhm.
and he started talking about his own mom. And he's
Mhm.
in the medical community. and he started talking about his regrets
Mm-hmm.
and what he wished he had done differently for his own mom, and that she had ended up passing a year before. And he was crying.
Yeah.
Um, and he was talking about how whatever I'm doing, to keep on doing it for her, keep on advocating for her. And then he ended the conversation with, you're really not that bad. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much.
That you took some time to get to know me. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just, this is why I do what I do. This is why I was fighting for her, because, with my dad, it was a little different. His battle was different. You know, he would listen to advice, about methodically approaching things, but he also took a different path where he, was very stubborn and listened to just the doctors, even as he was declining and they were still pushing more chemo on him.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it stays with you. It really does. So when mom was in the hospital, I was gonna fight tooth and nail to make sure that, they listened to us and not the other way around. You were not gonna intimidate. You were not gonna do this. You were not gonna do that. It's gonna go the way she wants it to go, because we've had many conversations about my dad and how he battled and what we wish he had done differently and what we would do if we were in this situation again.
I understand. Poda, what did that trigger for you that you want to say?
I want to say I am so grateful for you, Kim.
Yeah.
I am so thankful and grateful for you and for Archie. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the two of you and God.
Yes, yes.
You
No, and
know,
I appreciate you, and I'm grateful that you're willing to try, because some individuals they're too tired and they may really want to check out. Even when you
no,
came back too, you
I
could
I
have given
never
up
want
when
to
you
give
came
up.
back too. You
Yeah, I don't want to give up. Never want to give up. I do everything
She
you
doesn't
tell
quit
me.
ever.
No, I honestly, you guys are doing amazing. And again, it does take a village. And as you guys know, I'm going to do a future podcast on just caregivers. You guys know when everybody's trying to pull together, siblings, children, grandchildren, husbands, spouses, it's not easy and it's
No,
exhausting and it's scary and it's emotional. There's ups and downs. We're painting some of the good parts about this, but it's not easy
no.
being our best selves in today's world and managing our current obligations with our life, our family, our bills, and helping each other and helping ourselves. Like what you said, Poda, it's not easy every day to get up and cook for yourselves and budget for the money, for the food, and to make sure you're feeding yourself. But I have been so grateful that even in your 70s, and again, I don't consider 70s even old, but in your 70s, you're choosing to try to still be your best self and not assume that just because you're in your 70 that you're just supposed to check out and pass away. And I do want
No.
to commend you. You're not using a walker. You are walking around on your own. Whenever you get a hip or back issue, you always look for solutions. You do corrective exercise, you massage your body, you try to
Yeah,
rest.
I do. I do all the above. And I'm so thankful for all your support and help.
Yeah, no, I am so grateful for all of you, even when it gets tough. I tell people all the time when I'm helping, it's still kind of like a marriage. We could get frustrated, pissed off, tedious, and we're either going to run or we're going to dig and get better and go deeper. But it's so tough because everybody's coming from their own set of knowledge, fears, worries, exhaustion, and
Yeah.
it takes a lot to try to get through it. So I'm so grateful that each of you have been willing to do it and that you're willing to share your story to help others, and to show them it's perfectly imperfect. You're alive, you're here. You
Yes.
learn so much about your body. And one last thing I want to talk about before we sign off, or you guys give me your last words, is Poda has done an amazing job at working on her thoughts. We don't realize, and this is something I had to work really hard on, and I'm always, redirecting, but we do not realize how powerful our mind is. If we're
Yes.
thinking too far in the future, too much in the past, or not feeling good enough, and we're constantly saying negative stuff to ourselves, or worried about something bad happening, it literally impacts your physical body. It changes your cortisol, your adrenaline, your
Yes.
inflammatory proteins. And that was one thing we saw that was a part of Poda's healing process. And she is constantly looking for ways, but not in a neurotic way where she's exhausting herself, but in a way to figure out how do I keep refining my walk, become my best self, and change the way that I think, even though it's maybe been normal for her for 70 years, she's
True.
willing to evolve and see how well she can get her mind to not be worrying about things that aren't effective for her, right?
Exactly. I've learned so much. It's
She's doing really good.
it's crazy, you know. When I realize negative thoughts coming in, I just put a stop to it. And yeah, I don't give in to it.
Yeah, we acknowledge it and we transmute it into something more effective because we're human. We're going to
Yep.
have it.
Yeah.
None of us are invincible. Are there any last thoughts, questions, or anything you want to share with anybody that could be listening that you want me to allow you to say before we sign off? Anything on in your heart?
My heart is don't give up. Keep trying. You're gonna have one good day, then you know you're gonna go two steps ahead and then one step backwards. But keep trying. Don't give up.
Yeah, you're worth it.
Yes, we are. Yep.
Small steps equal big change.
Yeah, sometimes we want to get that A right up front and be perfect. And sometimes if we're not perfect, we beat ourselves up to the point of almost doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I agree, I had to really work on being okay. One small change a day would be a cumulative effect that I'll be better by this time next year, even if I feel like I'm not being perfect. So I'm okay to get like a B minus versus an A plus. Because when I was giving up, I was getting an F and then it all sucked all the way around.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you too. Thank you for being
We appreciate
vulnerable.
We
Thank you for
appreciate you.
thank you for your faith, your perseverance, your strength, your fearlessness. And even when you feel like you're not in that space, thank you for always working to return back to it because it makes a huge difference for all of us and including your beautiful children and grandchildren.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kim. Thank you
Kim.
for
Thank you.
everything.
God
Thank you.
bless.
Bye.
Bye.